I'm Greg Giuliano. I'm an executive coach, organizational change consultant, and author. I believe leaders have the power to shape the future and change people's lives. I also believe people who challenge the status quo and go beyond usual and ordinary are rare. They're willing to go to the edge and push farther, over and over again. When I find these ultra leaders, I love to talk with them. In each episode, I talk with ultra leaders to learn how they do what they do and how they keep growing as leaders. I promise you a full dose of ultra leadership from other ultra leaders just like you in every conversation. We're at the edge of another episode. Let's jump in. Welcome to Ultra Leadership. I am excited about today's conversation. I am being joined by Neil Giuliano. Neil serves as president and CEO of Greater Phoenix Leadership, which for 48 years has been the forum for CEO leaders to collaborate with the government, education, and philanthropy sectors to create and sustain a safe, healthy, and prosperous community in the Greater Phoenix area. Before that, Neil was president and CEO of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, one of the largest AIDS service foundations in the world. Prior to that, Neil served as president and CEO of GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. At GLAAD, he expanded the organization's media and anti-defamation work to include sports and advertising media, and the GLAAD Media Awards were broadcast on Bravo TV network. Neil's long career of service and leadership began when he was elected to the city council of the city of Tempe, Arizona, where he eventually served multiple terms as mayor, during which time Tempe was named an All-American City. He's the author of The Campaign Within, A Mayor's Private Journey to Public Leadership, and he's received numerous awards and honors for his work in public policy and community activism. He served as a distinguished lecturer at the William J. Clinton School of Public Service at the Clinton Presidential Library. He's also an endurance cyclist who's completed the 545-mile, 7-day San Francisco to Los Angeles bike ride 6 times. He still lives in Tempe, Arizona, where it seems from his biography he never sleeps. And his biggest accomplishment in life is that he is my older brother. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you, Greg. I'm glad you got my name pronounced right. That doesn't always happen when I do these sort of things.
I know. Well, I've been practicing it for a number of years now, so I've almost got it down.
Yes.
So let's jump in. I like to give the listeners a win right out of the gate. And I can see you. People can't see you, but you've got a wall of books behind you. And I know in your house you have books everywhere. You're a voracious reader. What book are you currently recommending to folks?
Well, first, thanks for having me on and talk a little bit about ultra leadership. Well, yes, there are a lot of books in my home library here. My frame of books these days has to do with what I'm asked about the most by CEOs in Arizona and other places from CEOs that I work with and people who are wondering what's going on in the broader ecosystem for business advocacy among corporate leaders. And so that really comes down to now is how do we navigate what's going on in the political world? And, in sort of the history, it used to be that the business community had a great relationship with Republican leadership and an okay relationship perhaps with Democratic leadership, depending upon what part of the country they were from. But now the Republicans look at corporate business leaders as those woke corporate leaders, and Democrats remain skeptical sometimes as well. We see movement on both of those, but it is movement. There is nothing entirely solid, which is, I think, a reflection of our overall times. So the books that I'm talking to people about these days both revolve around what happened in 2020 and what has happened in the last 2, now almost 3 years since 2020 with regard to the election or the big lie or just the whole issue of dealing with a society that seems more and more split on the value of the institutions that prop up our democracy. So one is called The Big Truth, and that's written by David Becker with the Election Official Legal Defense Network and Major Garrett, who's been a major broadcast journalist for a long time. And The Big Truth is about upholding democracy in the age of the big lie. And it really breaks down what happened, the narratives that sprung out of 2020, even before the results of the 2020 election were in. We all know that now, and what it means and how to navigate that. The other book is very significant, that's very data-based, is called The Bitter End. And that is the 2020 presidential campaign and the challenge to American democracy, because it notes the very direct challenge that came out of that election and talks about a path forward. Are we in the bitter end or are we not? So a combination of The Big Truth and The Bitter End provides information about how leaders today can be engaged in conversations they absolutely cannot ignore, and yet do so with data and with fact and not just opinion from the public space. Both really good books. I'm not entirely through either of them as yet, but they're fascinating.
That's awesome. I work with lots of leaders who have to recognize, like you said, that they exist in a larger ecosystem and they're trying to do business in a larger ecosystem, and being aware of the realities can only help them.
They absolutely have to be. When those conversations come up, business leaders cannot be silent. They cannot be, gee, I don't know about that, or wow, what's really going on with that? They have to be informed, especially any of our leaders of major corporate brands and corporate interests.
Yeah. So I wanted to flip it and talk to you a little bit about your personal approach to leadership. You've been leading teams. You have a long history of leadership in the public sector and in the private sector. And when people tell the story about their leadership, about your leadership, what do you hope they're saying about you? So fill in the blanks for me. I am a blank leader who helps others blank.
So I view my role in whether it was as mayor of the city, sitting at the end of the public policy table with members of a city council and a staff team, or now working with corporate leaders or the other organizations that I've led. My role is to empower them and help them be successful. It's always, what do you need from me? So I try to be a very engaged leader, engaged with the people that I'm working with, available to them. And my role is to help them advance. If we have identified their core functions and their core activities and their core outcomes of what their work is going to be on a month, quarter, yearly basis, my job is to help them accomplish what they need to accomplish.
So that's an elegant way of thinking about leadership, right? Helping someone or a team or an organization to advance, right? It's enabling that positive transformation. What does that look like for you in practice when you're sitting in meetings with a team or with a group of CEOs? How do you facilitate that? How do you make that happen?
Well, it's the 6 important words. What do you need from me? They know that I'm the person ultimately responsible for what we're trying to accomplish, but they also know they're the ones that are daily working on those implementation plans, right? I'm not doing, while I'm on this call talking with you on this podcast, my small team is doing their work and being engaged in it. And so when I talk to them next, which at this point it's Thursday afternoon, it's probably at a Monday meeting or a Monday huddle, it's going to be, what do you need from me? How can I help you? What are you working on? And what do you need from me to get done what we have already identified to be what you need to be doing?
The first word that you mentioned when you were describing yourself was empowering. And those 6 words are so empowering, right? It puts the onus on people that they own their work and you have a role. You work with them. They work
Right.
with you, not for you. And that's really empowering.
Well, it's the way you get the most out of your employees, and you help to align what it is they're trying to do with the organization's goals. We already know that the best motivation is going to come when an organization's goals are aligned with the person's individual goals, their work goals, their professional development goals. So I'm always trying to listen for, how do you align that? How do you empower is, I guess, the word. But really, I'm there to help them. And presumably, I'm in a position to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that someone listening right now is, when they go into their next meeting with their team, they're going to ask that question. And so you've helped somebody today. So you've been doing this a long time. A lot of people have always tried to offer advice, even when you don't ask for it. What's the worst leadership advice you've ever heard?
Probably Early on, it was this belief that you need to accumulate. To be a leader, you need to accumulate. You need to have people. You have to have a lot of people. You have to own a lot of things, and you have to have control, right? I actually view it that I think that was terrible advice, because my experience is it's exactly the opposite. I will have more influence when I give power away. I will have more outcome from the people that I'm working with when I'm not trying to hold things and accumulate things, but I'm giving that back and letting them run with it. Now, sometimes it's important for me to have guardrails on there for them and to help them understand the parameters within which they should try to accomplish that. And if they want to try to accomplish that outside of that, then come back to me and we'll have a conversation about it. But that's what it is. The notion that you have more, because for me, leadership, it's not an office, it's not a title, it's influence. If you don't have influence, you're not a leader. And you can have a whole lot of influence with people without being a designated leader, right? So you want to be the person that has influence, and you have influence by not accumulating, but by relating and engaging and giving people the opportunity to advance themselves with your support.
That is a philosophy that runs counter to what we see in lots of organizations. What you're talking about, it's beautiful leadership. It's influencing more and more effectively by giving power away.
But it may be a little culturally different than what some organizations are used to. My main roles have been in the public sector and then in the NGO and social impact sector, now working with, I talk every day to a dozen or more of my 140 members of the Business Roundtable for the Greater Phoenix area, called Greater Phoenix Leadership. And they understand the need to be asking those kinds of questions and trying to play that kind of a role within their organizations and within the organization that I run for them. So I will tell you, it's fascinating and rewarding to work with and partner with 100 plus other people at the top of their organizations, leading huge teams, very, very influential and consequential organizations that employ combined probably 350,000 people.
Yeah. So let's flip it. So the worst advice turned into being a really beautiful way of looking at the role of the leader. You offer lots of advice. You mentor lots of younger people, younger leaders. What's your advice to folks just starting out? Maybe they're the manager for the very first time, leading a team for the first time. What's your advice to younger leaders?
Well, it really depends on where they are in their personal, professional development and what they're trying to get out of whatever role they're in or their role that they're seeking. I tend to interact with a lot of folks who are mid-career, wanting to advance, and they pretty much know their skill set. They always need to refine skill set and so forth. But a lot of the advice that I give people is that it's not about what. You know what you're good at. You know what you need to improve in to move on a continuum of your own personal leadership development and your career development. You know the what. I'm going to assume you know the what because you're already talking to me. So you know the what. It's about who. It's about who you want to partner with. It's about who you want to be engaged with, who you want to make more successful. Unless you're the person at the very top of the organization, then your job is really to help that organization and that person at the top of the organization be even more successful than they are. So who do you want to do that for? You obviously don't want to do it for just anyone. If you're going to work your butt off to be successful for an organization that improves the bottom line or improves a brand within the community, you want to do it for something you believe in, someone that you believe in. So it's not so much about what all the time, it's about who. And the due diligence, your due diligence on the who is as important as the due diligence that's being done about you for both your what and your who.
Yeah. So what I get in there is the being clear on what the experience you want to have. What do you want it to be? So what's the experience? You know what you're good at. You could do it anywhere. What experience do you want to have? What kind of an organization do you want to be a part of? And that actually ties to another question of the why, right? Why are you doing what you do? And is there a higher purpose that drives you engaging and producing on behalf of an organization?
Yep. I always go back to, you're going to be successful. You're going to do a really good job with wherever you land, with whatever organization it is. who do you want to look good? Who do you want to help make look good? What cause do you want to advance and help do even better with what they're doing today? So think of the who. And when the who is aligned and there's passion and belief behind that, then the what is going to follow even more strongly than it ever has.
100%.
We work for people.
Yeah.
We work with people. And if the who is not really comfortable and really, really a good setting, then, you're not getting the maximum opportunity that you should be.
Yeah. So you're awesome. You're very successful. And like a lot of leaders who are just as awesome and very successful, you probably have something that you get in your own way, that it's a habit or a practice that, I wish I didn't do that, because when I do that, it doesn't work for me the way it maybe used to. So what's the way that you sometimes can get in the way of your own success?
Sometimes it's more about the limitations and taking on smaller activities or pieces of the larger that you can hit out of the park. That it's like when you have a pitcher that's pitching a slow ball, and you can just kind of bat that. You want those all the time. You take the easy hits instead of going for the grand slam kind of a thing. And I think sometimes it's nice to sort of rack up those home runs and hit it out of the ballpark all the time on a bunch of little things. But what you really want to do is you want to have a combination of those easy grand slams that you're hitting out of the park because it was a slow pitch, but you also want to have the ones that are a stretch. You want to have the opportunity to go beyond grasp and really reach, and within parameters, of course. But sometimes it's when things get really, really busy, it's easier to take the slow pitch and hit it really far.
Yeah, so it's that you just defined ultra leadership. Thank you, right? So go to the edge and push farther, right? So how do you kind of wake up and go, I've been kind of hanging out in my comfort zone a little too long? How do you remind yourself, it's time to kick it up a notch?
Well, I work for 130 CEOs. So every day I'm awakened to the reality that there's an expectation still to be met.
Yeah.
And that keeps me on my toes quite a bit. I mean, it's literally different conversations with different people every day who want different information and different assessments and evaluations of what's going on. And so every day I'm stretched in that way.
Awesome.
And I never know what it's going to be about.
So I like to end all my coaching conversations and all the team meetings that I am in. I like to end with allowing everybody to express some gratitude, because it makes our brains happy to do that. So I'll give you a chance. What are you grateful for today?
Well, today was my first board meeting of the new year, which means it's also the board meeting where I have a conversation with my 24-member board on my own performance for the last year. And I guess I'm grateful I have a job, right? Now they're still, it's the kind of thing where we talk a little bit, then I leave the room and they continue the conversation. I haven't heard what the outcome is just yet, but I'm grateful to be able to work with really smart people who are doing amazing things with their own organizations. And of course, I'm involved with them for their external facing role in the community. I don't tell them how to run their businesses. That would be the last thing I would try to do. But when they're talking about positioning themselves in the community for broader leadership on the issue of education or on our criminal justice system or trying to do something with arts and culture in the greater metropolitan region here in Phoenix, I can help them in that regard, right? So that's where I'm a coach and a confidant and someone that's helping them evaluate opportunities for their leadership imprint in the broader community. Like I said, not their own organization, but their leadership imprint in the broader community is something that I have a great honor, and I'm grateful that these people running these big, huge organizations would call me and say, what about this board of directors? Is that something I really want to be on? What would I be able to help them with? What's that possibility? And I'll vet it with them. I'll do some research. I'll make some phone calls, and we'll be able to kind of see, is that going to be the right fit for your time and for your effort and what you bring to that situation versus what you get out of that kind of a situation, right? What's in it for your organization, for you to be involved with that activity. So that I'm grateful to have to play that kind of a role every day with different people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'll give you the final word. Any parting thoughts? Imagine you're giving your commencement address and this is your big finish.
My big finish? Well, I think one of the things that we always need to do, especially if you're in a leadership role or aspiring to a more significant leadership role, is number one, slow down, right? Take a certain level of understanding your situation. So one of my favorite leadership books, I don't know if you've come across it, but Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky, who teach a leadership course at Harvard. It was part of my mayor's class at the Harvard mayor's class after I was elected mayor. And I've never forgotten it. It's the concept of going up on a balcony and watching what's going on in your world, in your ecosystem. Who's playing what roles, who's entering and exit the stage at what times, who's offering content and who's making people laugh, sort of, just really being on the balcony and watching. And what I learned from that is that there's really I call them the 3 Ds. The first thing is you have to have a level of determination that may not always be easy to have determination in the world that you're working in. You could be working in a very competitive industry where it's pretty cutthroat and you need that third quarter margin in sales to be up and you're not so sure it's going to be, right? So you have to have the determination to really focus. For a leader, I think when people ask me what's leadership about and what differentiates a leader, discernment. A leader, I could easily every day, both while I was an elected official for 14 years and mayor for 10, and certainly now, I could be pulled into so many side conversations and so many things that are going on. And if I can't discern pretty much rapidly whether I really need to be engaged in that or whether that needs to be handed off or whether it needs to be delayed or it needs to be parked for a little while, or yes, I absolutely need to pick up the call the next hour and do something about it. You have to know your organization and know your situation well enough so that discernment is sort of just commonplace. And you can discern what really you need to be engaged with and what not. So discernment is really important. And then it takes discipline. It takes discipline to stick to termination plan. It takes a lot of discipline to discern issues and so forth in a professional way. And you have to maintain that level of discipline each and every day to be able to have a long track record of success for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So I wrap determination, discernment, and discipline all together. And that's what I encourage people to search for.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for being with us and for the conversation. I loved it. After all these years, I'm still learning from my brother. I love that. I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And so to everybody who's listening, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, remember, you have the power to shape lives, shape the future, and drive better results. That's what Ultra Leadership is all about. If you're enjoying Ultra Leadership, please take a minute and give us a review wherever you find your podcasts. And please stay in touch. Sign up for our Ultra Leadership newsletter at ultraleadership.com. Now, before you jump to your next meeting, I invite you to reflect on what you heard today. What stood out for you? What insight might you want to incorporate into your leadership practice? Until next time, remember, as a leader, you always have the power to shape the future and change lives. So go to the edge and push farther. Thanks for listening.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.